The creatures we're about to discuss didn't just rule prehistoric seas. They turned the ocean into a three-dimensional killing field where size, speed, and armor meant absolutely nothing. These were the contemporaries and successors of land dinosaurs, perfecting the art of aquatic murder across hundreds of millions of years. Every single one of them would end you before you could process what was happening. Modern great whites, they're the ocean's participation trophy compared to what once lurked beneath the waves. Let's talk about why you should be grateful for that asteroid. Picture this. You're treading water in the late Cretaceous seas. About 70 million years ago, the water is murky and warm. You can't see more than 20 feet in any direction. 50 feet of pure predatory rage is already accelerating toward you from below. Mosasaurus wasn't just big. Plenty of animals are big. It was big, fast, intelligent, and built like nature's cruelest weapon. At over 50 feet or 15 meters long and weighing upward of 15 tons, it dwarfed modern great whites, which max out around 20 feet. But size was just the opening act. The real horror show was the jaws. Mosasaurus had a double-hinged jaw system that could unhinge like a snake's, allowing it to swallow prey nearly as large as itself. Inside that first set of teeth, each one serrated and recurved to prevent escape, was a second set of pterygoid teeth on the roof of its mouth that pulled prey backward down its throat. Once those jaws closed around you, the physics of escape literally didn't exist. The bite force has been estimated at around 13,000 to 16,000 pounds per square inch. For context, that's roughly the same as a T-Rex. But unlike a T-Rex, Mosasaurus was hunting in an environment where you couldn't run, couldn't hide, and couldn't even scream properly. Speed? Mosasaurus could hit bursts of 30 miles per hour in the water. You swim at maybe 2 miles per hour if you're an Olympic athlete. Do the math, but don't spend too long on it. You'd be dead before you finished the calculation. Mosasaurus had a metabolism that required constant hunting. Fossil evidence shows healed bite marks on other mosasaurs, meaning these things were so aggressive they cannibalized each other when convenient. They ate sharks, giant sea turtles, plesiosaurs, and pretty much anything else that had the misfortune of being made of meat and existing in water. If Mosasaurus was the relentless hunter, Kronosaurus was the patient executioner. Swimming in early Cretaceous Australian waters, around 120 million years ago, meant accepting that death could come from stillness. Kronosaurus was an ambush predator, a 30-foot or 9 meters pliosaur with a skull that made up nearly a quarter of its total body length. Let that sink in. Roughly 9 feet or 2.7 meters of skull. For comparison, your entire body could fit inside its head with a room for a friend. The skull wasn't just large, it was architecture specifically designed for catastrophic violence. Those jaws contained teeth up to 11 inches long, conical and slightly recurved, built not for slicing, but for gripping and crushing. Bite force estimates vary, but conservative calculations put it around 30,000 pounds per square inch. That's enough to crush a car engine block. It's enough to bite through the armor plating of other marine reptiles. Kronosaurus ate other apex predators for breakfast. Literally. Fossil evidence shows it preyed on large sharks and other marine reptiles. When you're so dominant that other apex predators are just menu items, you've transcended the normal food chain into something almost philosophical. The ambush strategy made it worse. Kronosaurus would hover motionless in murky water, using minimal energy, waiting. Its eyes were positioned for binocular vision, giving it excellent depth perception. It could judge distance perfectly. And when prey wandered into range, whether that prey was a shark or a sea turtle or a hypothetical time-traveling human, the attack was explosive. From dead stop to full speed in seconds, jaws opening to an angle that would make a snake jealous. And then, impact. You wouldn't have time to register the movement. One moment, you're swimming in what seems like empty water. The next moment, you're inside something's mouth, and several tons of pressure are turning your body into a biological stress test. It was never designed to pass. The Australian seas during the early Cretaceous were already hostile, but Kronosaurus made them personal. It didn't just kill you, it emerged from the nothing to do it. Let's rewind the clock, way back, before the dinosaurs, before the marine reptiles, before most of what you'd recognize as modern ocean life. We're talking about the Permian period, roughly 290 million years ago. This is when the ocean decided to get creative with nightmares. Helicoprion was a 25-foot or 7.6 meters cartilaginous fish, think shark adjacent, that developed something so bizarre, so uniquely horrifying that when paleontologists first found the fossils, they spent decades arguing about what body part they were even looking at. Some thought it was a defensive spine, others suggested it was a dorsal ornament. A few proposed it was some kind of external structure on the snout. They were all wrong. It was a tooth whorl, a spiral, a biological buzzsaw that grew continuously throughout the animal's life, with new teeth forming at the center and pushing the older teeth outward in a tightening coil. And here's where it gets worse. This thing was located in the lower jaw, positioned so that when Helicoprion closed its mouth, the whorl rotated backward, pulling prey into its throat while simultaneously shredding it with dozens of serrated teeth. Imagine being caught by a circular saw that's also swallowing you. The teeth themselves were triangular, sharp, and arranged in a spiral that could contain 180 individual teeth in the larger specimens. Each bite wasn't just a bite, it was a mechanical process. Close the jaw, the whorl rotates. Teeth slice through flesh. Prey gets dragged backward. Mouth opens. Repeat. Nobody is entirely sure how efficiently this system worked because we've never seen anything like it before or since. Nature tried this design once, said, "That's probably too horrifying even for us," and never attempted it again. But fossil evidence suggests Helicoprion was highly successful, spreading across ancient oceans worldwide. The existential horror here isn't just the tooth whorl itself, it's that we found these fossils and genuinely couldn't figure out where they belonged on the animal's body. We were holding a piece of organic machinery so alien that it broke our pattern recognition. And then, when we finally figured it out, the reality was somehow worse than any of the theories. 25 feet of cartilaginous fish with a mouth that functioned as a combination bear trap, conveyor belt, and circular saw, swimming in waters so ancient that the continents hadn't even formed into their current shapes yet. Fast forward to the Devonian period, about 360 million years ago, the Age of Fishes. This is when vertebrates were still figuring out basic concepts like jaws and not dying constantly. Most creatures were small, soft, and immediately edible. And then there was Dunkleosteus, which looked at the concept of vulnerability, chewed it up, and spat it out. 30 feet or 9 meters long, 4 tons, covered in articulated armor plating that made it functionally immune to predation. No teeth. Instead, it possessed self-sharpening bony plates that acted like guillotine blades, concentrating bite force into edges that could slice through basically anything that existed at the time. The bite force is where Dunkleosteus crosses from impressive predator into physics thought experiment. Estimates put it at 8,000 pounds per square inch, making it the strongest bite force of any fish ever measured. But raw numbers don't capture the horror. What matters is the speed and the design. Dunkleosteus could open and close its jaws in 1/50th of a second, 50 milliseconds from mouth closed to mouth closed again. Your brain's processing speed for visual information is around 13 milliseconds under ideal conditions, but recognizing what you're seeing and reacting takes closer to 200 milliseconds. Do you see the problem? By the time your brain registered that the mouth was opening, you'd already be in pieces. The blade-like plates worked through a shearing action, upper and lower plates sliding past each other like industrial scissors. Bone, armor, thick cartilage, none of it mattered. Dunkleosteus ate armored fish and sharks. It ate early sharks the way you eat potato chips. Fossil evidence shows it was a messy eater. Regurgitated remains found near Dunkleosteus. Fossils suggest it couldn't fully digest the armor plates of its prey. So it would eat the prey, digest what it could, vomit up the hard parts, and move on to the next victim. Efficient in the most disturbing way possible. And here's the thing about armor. It's defensive and offensive simultaneously. Nothing could hurt Dunkleosteus. Its armor plating meant it could ram prey, could hunt in shallow rocky areas without injury, could engage in aggressive territorial behavior without consequence. It was a swimming tank with a bite that functioned as a hydraulic press. You wouldn't fight Dunkleosteus. You wouldn't escape it. You would simply exist in the water. And then you wouldn't, and the transition would take less time than a human heartbeat. The Devonian period ended with a mass extinction event. Dunkleosteus went extinct. The ocean exhaled. Now, let's talk about arthropods. You know, insects, spiders, crustaceans, small things, things you can step on or swat away or ignore entirely. Now imagine one that's 8 feet and designed for aquatic murder. Jaekelopterus rhenanii lived during the early Devonian period, about 390 million years ago, and it holds the record as the largest arthropod ever discovered. An 8-foot or 2.4 meters long sea scorpion. Not a scorpion that occasionally went in water. A fully aquatic arthropod predator with all the nightmare features of terrestrial scorpions scaled up to absolutely not proportions. The claws were the signature feature. Heavily serrated, powerfully muscled, approximately 18 inches long. Those serrations weren't decorative. They were designed to grip struggling prey while the tips pierced through armor or flesh. Once Jaekelopterus grabbed you, the serrations meant every movement you made to escape just dragged those teeth deeper into your body. Compound eyes gave it excellent motion tracking. Arthropods have some of the best visual systems for detecting movement, and at this size, those eyes meant Jaekelopterus could spot prey from considerable distances in clearer water. It wasn't ambush hunting like some of the other creatures we've discussed. It was actively patrolling. Here's what makes Jaekelopterus uniquely terrifying. It hunted in shallow waters, estuaries, and coastal environments. All those places where you'd feel relatively safe because big predators stay in deep water. That's where Jaekelopterus lived. It was probably hunting in waters shallow enough that you could stand up. The attack strategy was straightforward and horrifying. Those claws would seize prey, smaller fish, other arthropods, anything that moved and fit the size range. And then the mouth would go to work. Eurypterids had complex mouth parts designed for both crushing and tearing. They could handle hard-shelled prey and soft-bodied prey with equal efficiency. Swimming mechanics made it worse. Jaekelopterus used its paddle-like appendages to move through the water with unsettling agility for something its size, fast enough to chase down prey, maneuverable enough to navigate complex coastal environments. And the existential horror, this thing was an arthropod, the same basic body plan as a shrimp or a spider or a scorpion, just scaled up to dimensions that shouldn't exist outside horror films. There's something uniquely disturbing about familiar body plans at wrong sizes. Your brain recognizes the shape, segmented body, multiple legs, claws, that distinctive arthropod appearance. But everything about the size screams danger at a level your instincts weren't designed to process. Jump forward to the Jurassic period, around 160 million years ago. Marine reptiles have diversified. The oceans are full of predators competing for resources. And sitting near the apex of this food chain is Liopleurodon, a pliosaur that combined size, speed, and sensory abilities in ways that made escape essentially impossible. 20 to 25 feet, or 6 to 7.6 meters long, 7 tons, 4 massive flippers providing thrust and maneuverability. But the real nightmare was what you couldn't see, its olfactory system. Liopleurodon had internal nostrils connected to highly developed olfactory bulbs. It could smell underwater. More than that, it could track scent trails through ocean currents. Blood in the water? It knew from miles away. Chemical traces from prey. A roadmap directly to your location. Think about what that means. In the open ocean, your primary defense against predators is being invisible, lost in the vastness of the water, one small target in billions of cubic meters of space. Against Liopleurodon, the open ocean became the worst place to be. Every chemical your body released into the water, and you're constantly releasing them, was a signal flare. The speed made it worse. Estimates suggest Liopleurodon could cruise at around 10 miles per hour and hit burst speeds of 20 to 25 miles per hour. That doesn't sound impressive until you remember that Olympic swimmers max out at about 5 miles per hour, and that's in a pool without terror flooding their system with adrenaline and ruining their form. The bite itself was almost anticlimactic after everything else. Massive conical teeth designed for gripping, powerful jaw muscles, bite force estimated at around 33,000 pounds per square inch. But really, if you've been tracked across miles of open ocean by a predator that could smell your fear, the bite was just the ending you'd been dreading since you first entered the water. Fossil evidence shows Liopleurodon ate everything. Large fish, sharks, other marine reptiles, even smaller members of its own species. When you have the sensory capabilities to track anything and the size to kill anything, dietary restrictions become more about preference than limitation. The other detail that deserves mention, Liopleurodon lived worldwide. Fossils have been found in Europe, Russia, South America. During the Jurassic period, when sea levels were high and oceans covered more of the planet, there was no Liopleurodon free zone. Every ocean had them. Every deep water environment was potentially their hunting ground. You couldn't hide from what you couldn't see. You couldn't outswim something 3 times your speed. You couldn't outlast a predator that could track your scent trail for miles. The only winning move was never entering the water in the first place. Back to the late Cretaceous, 85 million years ago. By this point, mosasaurs have diversified into multiple species, each specializing in different prey and hunting strategies. And among them, Tylosaurus developed adaptations that made it uniquely horrifying. 45 feet, or almost 14 meters long. 14 tons. Another mosasaur, so we're dealing with the same basic formula. Flexible jaws, double-hinged bite, serrated teeth, designed for gripping. But Tylosaurus innovated in the worst possible ways. First, the reinforced skull. Tylosaurus had a distinctive, elongated snout with dense bone structure. Fossil evidence shows impact fractures that healed, suggesting this snout was used as a battering ram. It would strike prey at speed, stunning or injuring them before moving in for the kill. Imagine being rammed by several tons of bone and muscle, moving at 20+ miles per hour. Even if you somehow survived the impact, you'd be disoriented, possibly injured, definitely vulnerable. Second, pack hunting behavior. Fossil assemblages suggest Tylosaurus may have engaged in cooperative hunting, particularly when taking down larger prey. This is speculative. Behavior doesn't fossilize well. But the evidence points towards social behavior at least during breeding season and possibly during hunting. Picture it. Multiple 45-foot predators coordinating attacks. One rams you from below, another approaches from the side, a third cuts off your escape route. Not that you had one, but the principle is worse when multiple apex predators are treating you like a group project. Third, geographic range. Tylosaurus fossils have been found across North America, Europe, and New Zealand. During the Cretaceous period, when sea levels were higher and continents were configured differently, Tylosaurus had access to nearly every major ocean. The Atlantic Seaway that split North America, Tylosaurus territory. The Western Interior Seaway, crawling with them. European chalk seas. You get the idea. There was no safe ocean. The hunting strategy combined endurance and aggression. Mosasaurs were active predators with metabolisms that required regular feeding. They weren't ambush hunters waiting for prey to wander close. They were pursuit predators that would identify targets and chase them down. And here's the nightmare detail. They had better endurance than you. A human can tread water for maybe a few hours before exhaustion sets in. A trained endurance swimmer might last longer, but eventually fatigue wins. Tylosaurus could swim continuously, could maintain pursuit for as long as necessary. The strategy was simple. Chase until the prey was exhausted, then attack when resistance was impossible. Fossil stomach contents show Tylosaurus ate fish, sharks, smaller mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, seabirds, and basically anything else that looked edible. Bite marks on fossilized prey show the characteristic mosasaur pattern. Grab, shake, swallow. Efficient and brutal. The extinction that killed the dinosaurs also killed Tylosaurus. The asteroid impact 66 million years ago disrupted ocean ecosystems so severely that large marine reptiles couldn't survive. But for nearly 20 million years before that, Tylosaurus patrolled the seas as one of the most successful predators in ocean history. Yet dominance never lasts forever. And somewhere in the fossil record, evidence began to surface of something even more terrifying. A marine predator that made even Tylosaurus look outmatched. Pliosaurus funki, better known by the name it earned in whispers of awe and disbelief. Predator X. The fossils were discovered in Svalbard, Norway, in 2006. Initial analysis suggested something unusual. Further study confirmed something extraordinary. By the time the papers were published, the scientific community had a name for it. Predator X. Official designation, Pliosaurus funki. Unofficial designation, the thing that made other apex predators reconsider their life choices. 40 to 50 feet or 12 to 15 meters long. Estimates put the weight at 45 tons. Heavier than most other marine reptiles, heavier than many whales. The skull alone was nearly 10 feet or 3 meters long. But size is just the introduction. The real story is what that skull could do. Bite force calculations for Pliosaurus funki are staggering. Conservative estimates put it at 33,000 pounds per square inch. More aggressive estimates suggest up to 48,000 psi. For context, that's 4 times the bite force of a T-Rex. It's stronger than any marine reptile ever measured. It might be the strongest bite force of any animal ever. The teeth were 12 inches long, conical, positioned in jaws that could open to extreme angles. But the length doesn't capture the reality. These weren't slashing teeth or cutting teeth. They were crushing, gripping, pulverizing teeth backed by jaw muscles that could generate forces sufficient to bite through bone, armor plating, and anything else that happened to be in the way. Fossil evidence suggests Pliosaurus funki preyed on other large marine reptiles. Plesiosaurs, smaller pliosaurs, large fish. Nothing was safe. There are bite marks on fossilized plesiosaur paddles that match Pliosaurus funki tooth spacing. It was biting off limbs, disabling prey by removing their ability to swim efficiently, then finishing the job at leisure. The attack strategy was probably similar to other pliosaurs. Burst speed, devastating bite, game over. But the sheer bite force meant Pliosaurus funki didn't need strategy refinement. It could win through brute force alone. Every attack was overwhelming force meeting insufficient resistance. Speed estimates are harder to calculate for extinct animals, but the flipper size and muscle attachment points suggest Pliosaurus funke could manage respectable bursts, probably 15 to 20 miles per hour, possibly faster. Again, you swim at 2 miles per hour. The math remains depressing. Here's the detail that should crystallize the horror. Paleontologists studied the fossils and concluded this was an apex predator with essentially no natural predators. Nothing was hunting adult Pliosaurus funke. It sat alone at the top of the food chain, hunting whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted. For millions of years during the Jurassic period, the oceans contained an animal with the strongest bite force in history, the size to back it up, and absolutely nothing to fear. That's not just an apex predator. That's an ecological force. The Jurassic Cretaceous extinction events reshaped ocean ecosystems and eventually led to the decline of pliosaurs. Pliosaurus funke went extinct around 145 million years ago, and the fossil record suggests that nothing quite like it ever appeared again. The ocean during these periods wasn't a place where humans could survive. We didn't exist yet, obviously, but if we had, we would have lasted approximately as long as it took for us to enter the water and be noticed. And yet, and this is the part that should give you pause, we're still discovering things. Deep sea exploration continues to find species we didn't know existed. Large ocean areas remain unmapped and unexplored. Every few years, someone finds something that makes marine biologists reconsider what they thought they knew about ocean life. The deep ocean is vast, the fossil record is incomplete, and life is still operating, still producing new adaptations, still experimenting with body plans and predatory strategies. The monsters we've discussed are gone, but the ocean that forged them is still here, still vast, still unpredictable, and still capable of producing new apex predators. Sleep tight, and maybe reconsider that open water swim you were planning.